Hi, it's Max. Welcome back to The Art of the Craft. Today, by popular demand, we're going to be making arras, which is an Arabic holiday bread that we used to eat in my family. Except it's so good, we eat it every day. Let's get cooking. Okay, so what is arras? Arras is a holiday bread, like I mentioned earlier, but we ate it all the time in my family. And you can have it with jelly, you can have it with cheese, you can have it with scrambled eggs in the morning. I even have memories of eating it with spaghetti. I know, don't knock it until you try it. It's excellent, and we eat it all year round. It's so popular, in fact, that my friends and family have now started asking me to bake for them. And if you know anything about me, I don't like baking, but this is the exception. So let's take a look at the ingredients. I've split them up into the dry and the wet side. On the dry side, we have bread flour. We also have salt and sugar. I've just mixed them together because they're eventually going to get incorporated in the dries and moved around. Then we have something special. We call it spice, and I don't really have a better translation for it, but don't worry, it's not spicy at all. It's more savory, it adds a buttery richness to the bread, and it makes it unique in a way that you probably haven't eaten before. Spice is a combination of two nuts or seeds. We have whole fennel, and we have mutlub, which is a cherry nut. Mutlub may be a little bit harder to find. If you don't have it at your grocery store, try your Middle Eastern store. If you don't have one of those, you can get it online. The tip I would say is buy them whole, toast them, and then grind them. Once you've ground them, you end up with this. This is what ground spice looks like. Like I said, not spicy at all. Make sure you have yeast. We're gonna use 1 full packet of yeast for this recipe. You wanna make sure it's vacuum sealed. You wanna make sure it's fresh. I've done this with stale, dead yeast before, and your bread turns into a pancake, and that's really depressing. So make sure you have these on the dry side. Now on the wet side, we have a combination of milk and water. And then we have 2 sticks of butter. I know it's a rich, rich bread, believe me. Now I have the butter on the wet side because we're eventually gonna melt it before incorporating it with everything. But let's do the dries first. So we've got our salt and sugar here. We're just gonna add this. Now, we've got our yeast, and I've already measured these out, and I'll include the measurements in the recipe. So we're gonna add a whole package of yeast, and now it's time to add the spice. And all these dry ingredients can just go in the same area because we're gonna mix this all later. There. So now let's mix all of the dry ingredients just to incorporate them all together so that they're all uniform. As you're mixing, make sure to get down to the bottom and kind of scoop up so that you're not having all of your spice or all of your yeast settle on the bottom. Now that all of the dries are incorporated, let's go ahead and add those wets. You'll notice here that I have melted the butter, so that's now in liquid form, and we're gonna add that slowly to the dry mixture before putting it in a stand mixer and mixing it up. So here's my butter. Just kind of slightly move it around here. The mixer is gonna do most of the work. Now to continue with the wets, let's go ahead and add some milk, and this is milk and water combined. You can see I'm just adding this in slowly so that it's not all in one goop. And I'm really just giving it a kind of rough mixture with my spoon here. Now that we have kind of a rough mix, let's go ahead and add it to the stand mixer and let that do the real work. Let the machine do the hard work. Give it about 5 minutes on low with the bread hook, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, the dough's done. Now, we're gonna move it from the mixing bowl back into the larger plastic bowl. A lot of yeast and sugar in that bread is gonna make the whole dough double in size, so we wanna make sure there's a vessel large enough for that. Cover it with some plastic wrap and put it in a warm area. 2 hours later, we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, it's been 2 hours. The dough has risen quite significantly, as you can see. The next step is to portion it out before we start baking it. So we're gonna want about 7 to 8 ounce dough balls from this mass. We're gonna weigh them out here, and then we're gonna let them proof for about another hour. Then we're ready to start firing them. All right, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Just go ahead and get your hands in there and move the dough around. It's actually a pretty easy dough to manipulate. Put some flour on your hands if you have to. And what you're gonna wanna do is take a clump like this. So take a handful of dough out of the batch here. Go ahead and weigh it off first. So we want a little bit more. There, okay. Now, if you take your dough like this and you kind of turn it inside out, you're pushing the bottom up through, and that's gonna make a nice smooth top. all the seams go on the bottom, and then you're good to go. Keep doing that until the dough is completely done. The breads have come out of the oven. As you can see, they look great. They've proofed really well. Now's when the fun really starts to happen. We're going to press each individual dough into about 8-inch rounds. And as you can see, I have a measurement on this table right here. Then you get to stamp them. You get to put your own signature on the bread. These are the most traditional stamps, the ones that we grew up with as kids. They're decoration, so they're not strictly necessary. You could certainly use a fork or a knife to score the bread, or even cookie cutters, but this is what we grew up with. Let's go ahead and flatten these breads now. So let's take one. I've got this sitting down on a parchment paper so that it doesn't stick to the bottom, and then we're going to put another parchment paper on top. The goal is to press it out 8 inches. Now I've got a really thick, heavy cast iron skillet. You want something like this to press down on the bread. Give it a good firm press, even a little jiggling, a little holding. The glutens in the bread are really gonna start springing back together, so it's okay to go a little bit further than that 8 inches that I told you about at the beginning. That's probably good. Yep, look at that. Exactly what we want. Now it's time to press them with the decorations. So take your decoration, put a couple in there. Perfect. So this is what the bread looks like. We're gonna set this aside and let it proof for another 15 minutes before throwing it in the oven. This is also a perfect time to get your oven hot. It needs to be 450 degrees, and you need to make sure that there's a baking stone or baking steel in there. Otherwise, the bottoms don't crisp up the way you want them. We've been proofing for about 15 minutes. Let's take it out of the proofing oven and stick it in the main oven. Here we go. 8 minutes. Let's check back. Absolutely perfect. Just like this. Make it at home and make every day a holiday. Catch you next time.